Can't say I planned that, but that was pretty good comedic timing. Comedy is all about timing. Oh my god, that's the best comedy joke I have. Thank you everyone for coming to the EmberJS meetup for August. I feel like I see a lot of new faces who's not been to one of these before. Okay, good. I was a little worried that I just had very poor facial recognition algorithm, but no, you are in fact all new. Awesome. It's good to see you. And welcome people who are new. Thank you to our fine friends at Groupon who were kind enough to provide spacing and food. I also work at Groupon. Sean works at Groupon. There are some additional Groupon people somewhere hiding in the back. My team specifically is hiring. We do EmberJS for internal applications, kind of trying to rebuild our entire internal stack on Ember. So if you'd like to come do that, please come see me. I guess other teams at Groupon are okay or whatever, but my team's pretty much the best. Some announcements. We already have the next 2 EmberJS meetups scheduled already. In September, we'll be having a Ghost.js hack night. Ghost is a blogging platform based on Node. They just rewrote their admin interface in Ember, and they're always looking for help. So they have a big list of Ember-related issues. And this is being cross-posted with the Node.js meetup, so it should be a good turnout. And hopefully we can sort of squash a lot of bugs. And then late October, early November, it's like November 3rd, Alex Matchneer, who's on Ember Core with me, will be coming out and talking about React.js, which sounds crazy, but we actually do a lot of sort of competitive analysis of other frameworks and look and see what cool things we can pick and choose from. And React, I think all of us on Ember Core really like and plan to steal all the good ideas. JSX? I said all the good ideas, so no, not JSX. And I played with React. If you have React questions, I'd be happy to answer those as well. I can also answer Angular questions, and I can answer the one Backbone question. Should you use Backbone? No. So just saved you all having to have a conversation with me. So Justin has given a lot of talks here before. He was complaining that apparently he's the only person who volunteers to give talks. So if you have talks or ideas for talks for late November or December meetup, or even all the way through to January, please let me know. We would be happy to put you on the schedule and get it planned ahead of time. Did I forget anything, Sean? Yay. So without further ado, Justin is going to talk about building native apps with EmberJS.
I would never complain about giving talks. I love the sound of my own voice. Okay, so just to start, who here has built like a 100% native application, either in iOS, OS X, Windows? Good number of you. Just in general, like, were most of them mobile? Okay. So we'll start. For those of you who don't know, this is what EmberJS is. It's a web framework targeted at building client-side applications. Most web applications today live within inside of web browsers, and browsers come with limitations. So like what I mean by that is that say you're using Chrome, like a lot of the times, like what you have to work with, at least in the frame or the Chrome of Chrome, is really targeted towards being a web browser. The web's an attractive platform. There's a very small barrier to entry. Like you can basically set up a web server, or even like an S3 bucket nowadays, and like post like a website. Also on the consumer side, they all have web browsers because Chrome, Firefox, IE, something ships with their computer. It's like the thing that everyone has without having to convince them that they should download your dangerous exe file or go to the Mac App Store, find your app, click install. So that's why it's a very attractive platform. We can kind of deliver this experience to users where they can access and use an application that you're making for them without having to really install any additional software that doesn't already serve kind of as a Swiss Army knife of banking and things that they already do. There's also a very large developer pool, and I think that in a way that feeds off of the small barrier to entry. A lot of companies are already building applications in HTML, JavaScript, just because it is so prolific. HTML and CSS rendering has gotten really good, so I don't know if you've ever tried to build like fluid layouts or something like that with like a traditional native, Windows application or something like that, but there's actually like, in a lot of cases, a lot of layout code that goes into that, or a lot of like constraints that you have to do, things like there's no real like centralized process, I feel like, for doing like layouts and things like that with a lot of the native frameworks that you get for free with HTML and CSS. And it's very easy to iterate and update. So what I'm saying there is, like, you can basically, change 4 lines of code and test something else, or fix a bug, push that to your server, and then the next time somebody hits your website, it just basically refreshes. So that's also really attractive to like startups and things like that, because they might constantly be piloting new ideas. And it's really easy because they don't have to recompile and push to the App Store and get a bunch of people to click the upgrade button. So that's why the web to date, I think, has been very successful. There's some advantages to native. So if you've ever worked with native, this kind of goes back to what I was saying about like the Chrome of Chrome really being like a web browser. With a native experience, you kind of have 100% control over what you want to do. If you want to make the window round, I mean, with enough lines of code, you can, if that's kind of what your application needs. You also have all the control over the experience of like how people would like navigate through your application, whether that be through different context menus or different drop downs in like the toolbars, where in Chrome you'll see like really that's all geared towards it being a web browser, but wouldn't be as geared to being a movie player. And then there's no browser compatibility issues, cores, or other sandbox-related concerns. So like, one of the things you've probably run into on the web so far is that you have to have special support to hit certain APIs, whether that be changing the way your code works to run on JSON-P, or making sure that your host that this web request is coming from is on the whitelist of the allowed domains or origins for that web request. So if I want to pull data from Twitter and have a completely client-side application, I can't really do that today because you can't create a full OAuth handshake on like a completely client-side application on JavaScript. You still need to go to the server, have it do the cross-domain request, send the data back, and then pipe that through your own API. Disadvantages of native. So like building a pure native application, I would say costs more in development and deployment. That may or may not be true, but from what I've seen, people who are specializing in things like Objective-C, C#, Java, that's going to be a lot more cost if you want to deploy to all 3 of those platforms, as opposed to web where you could just write HTML and JavaScript one time and have it work on all the platforms. There's additional tooling to learn. So you need to learn how to build an application in Microsoft Visual Studio, or make files in C or Xcode. So like to go cross-platform, there's a larger barrier to entry. Right, got to that. Updates may be required for every OS when new versions are released. So that means you now have to rebuild, resubmit to 3 different app stores, and test bugs across the 3 different platforms. And I would say there's a more limited developer pool. I think that probably the web is the most prolific for new developers. So in terms of like the developers that you have the opportunity to hire, like Objective-C developers and Android developers, may be a smaller pool. So what I'm really talking about is going hybrid. So like for when you need the ability to control the entire experience and you want to have your own application frame, but still develop with HTML and CSS technologies, going hybrid can be a really good approach. It gives you all the advantages, but allows you for the majority of the application service to keep the larger developer pool. And there's third-party libraries that make it easier. So who here has at least heard of like PhoneGap or Cordova or like one of those platforms? So those can be really good starting points for applications. Let's see here. And they also have like good plugins. So like a lot of the things that you want to accomplish with the native APIs may already exist as just a plugin that you could pull into Cordova. So if you want to interact with like status bars or native notifications, I'm trying to think of some other ones, just different like tap things. Like if you've ever built like a Cordova app, like one of the extensions that I authored was like to scroll like the main web view, like when somebody double taps on like the time, because that's something that is kind of like normal for like Safari, but you might not get in your custom application, or you want like some different interaction when somebody integrates with one of the native elements. So Cordova has been around, and it's actually possible to produce OS X, iPhone, Android, Windows apps. There's all kinds of different plugins on the target side for making different types of applications. But your mileage may vary. I've seen people try to deploy iPhone Cordova apps, and the performance on it's really poor. I think a lot of that depends on the code that you're writing and how familiar you are with the web, but it's not like a silver bullet. Like, you just can't expect to port your web application to a mobile device just by installing Cordova. Another cool alternative that I found is Coca Rack, I believe. So what this does is it runs like a rack web server as part of your application, and then you can use like different things like Ruby gems and things like that, and then they have a basically like rack to Objective-C bridge that can be leveraged. So you could basically like make like a Ruby call that would then do some kind of like system thing, but it's all still like a web API in a way. So like you could have an Ember application hosted in there and make like web calls, and then have those web calls trigger things like in the native experience. Or you could roll your own. So this is what I've been doing recently, which is to just kind of build my own application shell that hosts a web view and then embed the content for the application that I want to develop inside that web view. And this is cool for a few reasons. Like, you have like maximum control over the window. So if you're trying to build applications that aren't just browsers with like limited functionality, this can give you a lot of different flexibility on how you present your application. You can use or build like different bridges between like JavaScript code and native code just by trapping like the type of URLs that people are going to. I'll show an example of that in a little bit. But it's pretty easy. You just wire up delegates, create like your window interface, include your web view, and then just tell your web view to launch your application. And it's good during development process because you can actually just point it to your Ember CLI server and then get like constant updates in your native application without the need to constantly stop and recompile, which can be kind of a pain when you're developing for native. So you can kind of keep those same like live reload functionalities that you have in Chrome or something while developing a native application. So this is really good even if you're planning to build a full-blown Cocoa app. This can be a great way to prototype also. So without the need to build all the different interface components and things like that, you can rapidly iterate like in kind of a browser window and see what it would look like and how it would function and build your whole prototype out, and then go to 100% native application. So the overall experience is like, why would you even do this at all? Like, why not just build everything in Chrome or something like that? So I'm going to show a few examples of kind of like what the user experience might be using your application in Chrome versus using your application as a standalone. So who here has used Slack? It's like this chat kind of thing for Teams. How many people use it in Chrome, and how many people have downloaded the application? Don't all raise your hands at once. No. Who's used it in Chrome, like almost exclusively? And how many people like download and use like the desktop application of it? Okay, so to each their own. Was there a reason? Are you like on Linux, or you just prefer the browser experience? I mean, just shout it out. Yeah. Okay. So this kind of is just a screenshot of like our Slack at Coactive, and you can kind of see we have the Chrome window, and here's the Slack tab. And, this is great. This is a great experience. You know what I mean? Like, it's full screen. It's your chat. It's got everything that you need. Your channels. Like, you can do everything in it that you can do in a web application or in the desktop application. But what happens when now you've got like 30 different tabs open or something like that, and you really like lost the context of what you were doing. You might have moved on and gone developing something, and like you don't even remember that this tab is open. I mean, you might have 5 of these tabs scattered across, kind of inefficient. So let me move it along to the next kind of slide. All right, now, real wrench in the machine. There's 2 windows. So now you're kind of focused on this window. Slack's like back here behind this window. It would be really hard to kind of get back to like where you're going like easily if you're me. I bet other people are way more organized with their tabs in Chrome, but this is the problem that I have and why I really wanted the native application. I just closed that window behind it because I didn't even see that Slack was in it. Now like I'm not even getting the notifications from Slack. So I would say engagement is a pure concern to the success of an application. So here we see the Slack and the Chrome icons, kind of like in the context of how they would look in your dock. One of the big advantages to this is the application is always one click away. In the other example, when you're on a different window and a different tab in the window, it could take 2 or 3 clicks to get back, and you really lose like a lot of like your users' engagement. The icon badge is an immediate quit activity, so I can see like right here that like there's 1 new notification or 10 new notifications or no new notifications. So it's a real easy place to go reference and see what it is. With Chrome, it could have the same number of notifications, but just looking at the doc, I have no context of like how many missed messages I might have. We know the application is open and sending us information, so we don't have to worry, like, did I close that tab? Didn't I close that tab? Am I missing important stuff? Like, Slack is, like, really cool for, like, real-time communication and real-time interactions, so I would say that, like, you would all, like, not being able to see information like this could be a negative. But the web is getting better at this, so I think it was, like, last week or something, I went to CNN and Safari for whatever reason, and it actually asked me if I wanted to subscribe to desktop notifications. And I clicked yes, you know, like, why not? And now, every 15 minutes, they send me a notification, and I can't figure out how to turn it off. So, that's a little annoying. But, I mean, so there are, like, you know, operating systems and stuff are really starting to understand that the web is a place that people are developing tools, and they're giving developers more ability to do things like this. Chrome also has like a similar thing for like push web notifications. So I'm sure that if I had gone to Slack like recently, or they're working on the ability to like in Chrome like actually send you notifications still, like when you're not on their application. But that's like a newer thing. But the web is getting better to needing this less. I think I was just talking with Sean before we started here about how Chrome now kind of has this concept of like hosted applications. I don't know if anyone's heard of like packaged applications in the Chrome world, but that's like kind of the ability to create like standalones from web pages. So like things like that are like gonna make it easier to build native applications, but I would still consider those more native, less Chrome, because they run in their own context, like not in the browser. But you'll have to write less of the Objective-C, C# code yourself. But I still think we're seeing a shift going back to that. And all the principles of Ember like still apply to it. You know, like Ember was built for applications, but it just shouldn't stop at the web. Yeah, so and this is basically what it looks like as a desktop application. So it wouldn't surprise me if it's the exact same code. Maybe there's a few hooks here and there that are substituted out to do some of the native stuff. But like the core experience that you have is 100% portable from what the website is to what this is. And I think that that's an important concept to think about when you're building your web applications. You know, is the way that I'm architecting my web application suitable to be hosted as an independent application? You know, are you building it using like a Rails pipeline, or you know, where like it kind of comes in, like compiles, and like the Rails server sends it to you, or are you treating your Ember application as a first-class citizen, where you could just take the entire dist folder of your Ember application from Ember CLI, drop that folder into an Objective-C project, build it, and it'll just run. This is like a screenshot of Ardio, so they're also pretty famous for their desktop application. It's a web interface. I was listening to Dashboard Confessional. So this is just to kind of show like another integration point. So when you're using the Ardio desktop app, you have these very context-specific features in the menu. You know, you have a richer experience because people don't have to guess, like, do I right-click and they've hijacked the context menu? You know, do I click? Is everything a left click? We can now create like this whole kind of context around the application and actually present relevant results where people for years have expected them. So that means, having relevant things like controls, having your preferences like as an item there, rather than being like 6 clicks deep into some kind of menu that is really more about the experience and not the auxiliary. So like when I say the auxiliary, I mean like, Ardio's goal is to be like a music player. So it shouldn't really be baked into their application, like how to change like your social sharing preferences and things like that. It should function like iTunes. So what this allows you to do is to abstract a lot of the control and stuff. It's not about finding music. Like if you hit Ardio and came down to preferences, like you might find something there about like, the preferences of the application. But like having like a cogwheel or something and having to launch into that like from the actual application like makes it less portable. And then this is the same Ardio page in Chrome. So here you kind of see the contrast of, this isn't about playing tracks. This is about, forcing the reload of this page or zooming in, zooming out, like seeing developer tools, like that context is about being a web browser, not about my application. And there's really no way for me to control that as a developer using the Chrome side of things. Yeah, and this is just kind of show the other kind of like native, extensions that you can do. Like you can't turn the Chrome browser into a mini player, really. I mean, you might be able to do like a pop-out window, but this just is kind of like a better experience or way to kind of like illustrate how by doing a native application you can create, a good user experience. Like how many people here use RDO and how many people love the mini player? So, I mean, to each their own, but I find the mini player really nice because it takes up little screen real estate. I have easy access to changing, skipping to the next song. I can see what's playing now. I can adjust the volume without fumbling through a bunch of different Chrome windows. So that's why I think that this is a good experience. And currently, it's really only an experience you can get on mobile. But remember, we're giving them this experience, but like 90% of our application surface is still a web application. It's still HTML and CSS, just like this is. The web isn't dead, neither is native. I just made that up, but it was like a quote slide. So tools of the trade, at least for like creating kind of like the OS X Cocoa applications, it's really as simple as having Xcode, a web view, which is basically just a WebKit control that you can drop into your application, and interface builder. So how many people are familiar with like any of these tools or have used them in the past? Okay, good. So you're halfway there. And then I was just going to do a quick kind of code walkthrough / demo to kind of show like how this kind of stuff like actually works. So with any luck, so first I can kind of show like, I just put together like a real simple application that kind of shows something that you definitely couldn't do with a browser, and we can kind of talk about some of the advantages, and then we can kind of like walk through and I can show you like how it's done. Oh crap, wait. Gotta make sure my Ember server's running, because this is still development.
Make your terminal a little bit larger.
What was that?
Can you increase the text size on the terminal?
Probably. No.
Too good. Man plus. You just start with
Oh, looks like it's already started. Let me just restart it. Yeah, so all I'm doing right now is starting my Ember server. I haven't actually packaged like the frame in it yet, because I just kind of want to show how you can like basically modify your Ember application by running Ember server and then testing and prototyping your app like very rapidly, like as a native, component app, and see exactly how it's going to render. So now that that's running, we'll go to Xcode, start. All right. So like what it has done is, I don't know if like you caught that, but give it a second. It's still HTML, so it's slow. No. So what it's done is it's basically installed a toolbar item up here that says Ember with kind of like a show and quick control. And then it's kind of this like full screen takeover application that you could use for things like maybe like a weather application or something like that. And it's always basically like a key press away. So if I hit Option Command semicolon, it'll pop my application open. So like it's something that can kind of always live on the computer. It's programmed as a web application, and it just kind of gives this nice blur behind it like you've seen in like iOS 7, right? Yeah, it's like the hot stuff right now. And then this is kind of just to demonstrate how it's a full-blown Ember application. So it just has 2 routes and a few emblem views. So you click there and it'll load the second route. You can go back. And then it also kind of illustrates how through this HTML interface we can make callbacks through Objective-C with this hide button and then basically like kick itself out. So like what that did was it made a specialized URL request, and then Objective-C caught it and said, oh, this is how I'm supposed to respond when I get that URL request, and then run native code. So it's real simple. On the Ember side, God, I'm a bad speaker. I should have had this open already. So on the Ember side, we just have an Ember CLI application. And, it's very simple. We have route. So here's our routers. With the login page, which was the first one you saw, and then like the app page. So that's just to kind of illustrate you could start with a login, have the user log in, they click, it goes and authorizes them, kicks them back to the application. Templates. So this is kind of like our first template. Is that big enough? All right, so this is just like a real basic template that says, draw the Ember logo, put an H1 of welcome to Ember, link to application. So just like you'd write a normal Ember application. But through like basically having like a cool application frame, it like looks like more of a native application in a way because it can kind of like live over the entire thing. You can draw it as like frosted glass, like whatever you want to do. And then this is kind of the magic. So we on the hide button, we just have like a custom protocol called hide app, and then we just put something after it. We don't really need to. So like that's just a normal URL request. So like in a normal browser, it would try to load that URL. But the way that Objective-C and the what am I looking for here? Like it's programmed is we have these things called delegates. I don't know how to make this one bigger. Is there like an option for the font? Any Objective-C people know how to make Xcode's editor bigger?
Just Command plus.
It doesn't seem to be working. How do you zoom? Is it like you can do it with the trackpad, right? Option scroll. I think I just crashed Xcode. It's gotten better. Let me try to stop that. Oh no. Alright, let me try that again. Alright. So
You're in the right spot to zoom in those and preferences, fonts and colors.
that's what I thought. How do I change the font?
If you select them all, it's kind of like just click on one of those.
These?
Well, I'm guessing that you're on default, or yeah, just click on one of those inside that window.
Oh, I see.
And then you can.
Sorry about that, guys.
You'll never be able to get that.
How do I confirm my selection here?
It just goes.
This is max.
Mine does.
If you just close that, it should apply.
No. Sorry, I feel real stupid here.
You're actually using the Dusk theme.
What was that?
Are you changing the theme you're using? So on the left you have Dusk.
Yeah.
Are you actually showing Dusk?
I think it's just showing whichever one I've selected, right?
Mine's changing on the fly.
Oh, there we go. I don't know what I did. That worked. Okay. So this might be really hard to read, but it should be easier. So like the key thing here when kind of like doing like your Objective-C bridge, if you're building your own, yeah, this is horribly ugly, is there's this basically delegate that says decide policy for navigation action. So like what that's going to do is every time you click a URL or try to navigate somewhere, it's going to ask this function like what to do. So what we've basically said is if the URL scheme is external URL, then we're going to launch like an external web browser. Else, if the URL request stream is hide app, we're going to send to our application delegate hide window, and that's kind of what scrolls it back over when you click that URL. So you can like program a bunch of different interactions on the Objective-C side that you want to trigger from your native application, and that's kind of like how that works. Yeah. I guess now would be a good time to go to questions, or if anybody wants to see anything else about like how to wire up the actual application, but that seems like it would be kind of overkill right now. I don't know. What's everyone think? Questions? Yeah.
So when you would deploy this, would you still serve your Ember app and all your assets, or would you kind of
bundle it all together?
I would bundle all together. So I would do like an Ember build, and then I'd just take my dist directory, drop it in as a resource, and then there's just a way to basically get like a what's the relative pointer to like my application, and I just say like serve the index.html page, and then everything is already built by Ember, which is really nice because then you have a packaged application that you can basically like port somewhere else.
I'd love to play with this on my own machine. Is it on your GitHub somewhere?
I can put it on GitHub. I just don't have it now. I'll have a link to my GitHub, and I'll just put it up as a project, kind of like as a sample shell.
Why not something like Atom Shell or the WebKit?
Well, do those like really allow you to have like HTML experiences though? I was under the impression that those were more just like node bindings, like for like direct Objective-C calls. Like, so your interface is still native. Okay. Because I know, like, I looked into like things like the Node Objective-C bridge, like as other options for this, but it really seemed like they put the focus that your whole application was still like native UI, but like you were able to like program like the interactions and stuff in Node instead, and like draw stuff with Node.
I think Node WebKit is basically like
Node WebKit sounds like it's probably
it runs a website.
Yeah, a website. Yeah.
And then like serves static files static files, but you have like through that Node server you have access to it.
Yeah, those are definitely options. I think the point of this was more because, like, with those, in a lot of cases, like, you kind of just get the WebKit that they give you, like, in a frame, and, like, by, like, deploying something yourself, like, you have, like, the control to do something like I kind of demoed where it's, exactly. So you can do, like, full screen takeovers. You can say, like, I don't want it to have an app icon or a default window. It's just going to run as, like, a toolbar item. You know, it takes a little more on the Objective-C side, but once you kind of program that shell for each platform, like, 90% of your developers' work can be focused on like the web application, and that web application can live in Chrome. It can live on your, application. You'd have feature flags that slightly adjust the way the UI looks because the UI is now taken care of by the native, components because they might be placed better. Like in the example of RDO, there's search bars in the actual title bars instead of like part of the application. So I would assume that those are just different build flags they run against the same code base.
Have you ever done any cross-platform stuff using this approach where you're kind of sharing code?
Yeah, so like not on the desktop. I don't have a Windows machine really and don't really write like a lot of native Windows apps, but we've done it with Android and iOS, like a very similar thing using Cordova. With those types of things, I feel like those platforms are pretty like mature enough, and you can't really draw anything outside of like a square anyway. So it just makes sense just to build the whole thing almost as a web frame. But if you wanted to have things like native navigation and things like that, we've built iOS applications that only part of them was a web frame, like the harder part to draw. And then we had like, list views and stuff like that for navigation that just drove and brought in like things like a local SQLite file and like used handlebars to scaffold like HTML pages that were like used as like the content side of it, like on an iPad, like in a UI split view. Anyone else? Cool. All right, well, I'll put the info on GitHub. I think I have a slide here that has my information. And I usually post the slides on the meetup, so you can always come back and grab it. But it has my Twitter, my company's Twitter, my GitHub account. I'm on IRC Freenode. People get on there here. Have you guys ever been on the IRC for Ember? Well, it's for lots of open source projects, but there's this whole open source IRC server, ircfreenode.net, and there's two rooms, Ember and Ember CLI, which are a mediocre place to get help. No, those guys are great.
I don't need out there.
We're working on a product called Dewey.to, which actually like sponsors in a way like a lot of this work on native applications and things like that because they're things that we need. I invite everyone to try it out. It's a bookmarking social site, so like basically like it's a place to archive like websites and stuff that you think are cool, organize, categorize them, share them with friends and groups, and collaborate. Should be cool. If you have the Yo app, you can find me at jmcnally, one word. Thank you. Appreciate the time.
Awesome, thank you. Would anyone like to give a lightning talk? No, nothing planned. Very cool. Just anything you'd like to talk about, or demo, or something about 5 minutes.
If you want to.
Pardon? No? Yeah? Come on. Yeah, come on up. Show and tell.
You want to do it?
Give the man a round of applause. Come on up. Yeah. The world's become so much easier when everyone has a Macintosh for setting up like this. All the cords are there. Just plug in. Sweet. Do you have anything else?
I have it in the emulator on the other thing here. Let me just undo this hard code. And then it's probably the easiest way to show her. You can go to the live site.
Yeah, we can kind of.
Still not seeing anything in the screen.
Yeah, we're just.
And you want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, so my name's Dan Weatherald. We have 4 of our team here. We're out of the West Loop in Chicago. And we recently were acquired by a company called Vertical Scope. And I don't know if you guys know Vertical Scope, but they own a ton of forums.
They're the world's largest forum owner.
Yeah.
Does everybody know what online forums are? I assume everybody in this audience would know. Some people don't.
The big audience is like cars and hobbyists, basically. So we recently launched their mobile platform, and it's an in-browser experience. And
Let's just go to AVS forum because that's probably more.
so what we do is
Interesting.
we take over basically their site with our app if they hit us with a mobile device. So just there, you hit avs.com, and because you hit a mobile device, you're automatically shown Topify.
It's important to know it's all written in Ember. That's why we're showing it to you, not just because we felt like it.
Yeah, this is a complete Ember application. Kind of try.
I'll just click around a little bit. So the idea is that I'm now in AVS forum. I can go in and I can click through and I can read the forum. I don't know, does anybody use AVS forum? Audio Video Science Forum is the world's largest electronics and, I don't know, other nerd discussion forum.
I used it years ago.
Yeah. So Vertical Scope owns AVS forum. They own about 1,200. I should say we own about 1,200 forums.
Yeah.
We always still say they. But this is clicking through. I just clicked through a couple of categories, and now I'm on a sub-forum that has posts in it. If I want to read this guy's post, I go in and click on that. It loads in the images. I can scroll through. But the idea was that we were trying to avoid something like this experience. So if I go to, let me shut down the emulator. It's a little bit hard to show when you're not on a phone. But if I were to go to AVS forum here, and, oh, because it never shut down the, oh, sorry. You got to manually tell it to shut down the emulator.
And the plans for this actually are to be a PhoneGap app. It used to be about a year ago.
It's going to emulate no matter what we do.
So this is a complete rewrite of what we had about a year ago.
That's interesting.
You gotta get off Topify.com.
Oh, was I on Topify.com?
Yeah.
Oh, well, here's AVS. So I'm trying to draw a comparison. So if this is AVS forum, the desktop, and you were trying to look at it on a screen that was that big, it's not really a fair comparison because it will scale down better. But trying to run the full-blown desktop application, I'm sure a lot of you guys have done a search on Google, you end up at a forum. They don't even have a mobile skin. Maybe they have a mobile skin, but it tends to be a lot of pinching and zooming. You got like the left-hand side and the right-hand side where it's like or for you guys, this is the left. People's names and stuff are listed by the post, and then you end up like trying to double tap on the right-hand side so that comes into view so you can actually read the text and all that sort of stuff. So the idea is this is supposed to be a solution to that. So instead of this experience, then you get this one? Yeah, you get this experience on your phone. So it's just optimized for the phone screen. We have it set up so, if the gestures are working in the emulator, yeah. So all the gestures work that you'd expect to have in an application experience. You can slide the menu in, you can tap it away, you can slide it away. We can do the overflow menu, that sort of thing. If you switch and emulate, switch device, switch and say emulate an iPhone 5, and reload that. Then you get more of an iPhone-ish experience. So we don't have the little icon up here. We just have the hamburger. Still not like an exact iPhone experience because we just went for sort of a hybrid between the two. But the overflow menu, that's right, I can't do the...
Disable the swiping in iOS because you guys know the new iOS navigation of the browsers.
Right.
Totally like taking over any swipe navigation.
Chrome recently broke the emulator for iOS and touch events and stuff. So, but you get a different overflow menu and stuff like that. And there's just a flag that's set basically that says it knows that you're in iOS or Android. So you get that different experience. You get the more iOS experience. I don't know what else is interesting about it. We've got different controls that you can interact with, so you can grab that and slide it around to change pages.
Ember-wise, I don't know if you guys have any questions, but basically we tried to, so everything you see on the page, like that page slider, that breadcrumb at the top, they're just totally independent libraries that we wrote because we wrote the whole thing before we even knew about Ember. So basically that thing has its own JavaScript library for adding crumbs, removing crumbs, all that type of logic, but we were able to easily just plug it in, hook Ember up to it. I think each crumb, it's been a while since we had made the breadcrumb, but I think the crumbs are actually...
I just redid it, so what's the question?
I don't know, I can't remember if we did anything where we turned anything into a component. Oh, the slide out menu. Slide out thing that you saw, that's an actual like Ember component.
Right. And actually all these, we call these cards. Sorry, you can't see me pointing at my screen. We call these pieces cards. So every card is a component, and there's different types of cards. There's postcards, topic cards, forum cards, that sort of thing. So those are all rendered out as components. We got the ads that get inserted. So fixed ad at the bottom here. We've got the content, the square ad at the bottom of the content, and then depending on what page you're on, you can get this ad up at the top. One cool thing, so we actually just released last week, and we were on, as of the end of today we were on 41 forums of Vertical Scopes forums, and it's kind of cool because apparently, I guess they've been trying for years to figure out how to increase like pages per visit and how to increase like the engagement, how to increase the revenue that they're getting from ads and stuff. And so they have mobile skins running on all their forums, and you can see that experience. I can actually exit out of this if I want to. And you can get the AVS mobile skin, which isn't bad, but it's not a native feeling thing. It fits in your phone, but it's not the same thing. And actually from the numbers that we're seeing, it's pretty cool because the revenue across all the sites that we've put it on has gone up at least 15%, if not higher, up to 25 or 30%. The page views per visit have gone up at least 200%, if not 300% across all the forums, stuff like that. So it's a pretty cool argument for spending, some quality time making a really good interface. And then, like Dan said, the cool thing with this one is that when we're ready, we're going to compile it. Maybe doing it ourselves, maybe using Cordova, maybe using something else. We already have working versions using Cordova, but we will compile it and release it as a native app. We have a directory that goes with it, so basically it won't necessarily be an app for AVS. It'll be an app for thousands of forums, and you'll be able to go in and do a search and find the forum you want and stuff like that. And then uses some of the stuff that you were talking about with the tie-ins to be able to do notifications and badges and, using things like Aviary for nice photo editing when you go to upload a photo and things like that as well. So I would say, I don't know what else we have to say about it. We have one.
More Ember-y of it?
Yeah, I was trying to think of more Ember things. We have one thing that we've noticed and that we've been working on a lot recently is the speed difference between iOS and Android. So something that takes 1 second maybe on iOS might take 4 seconds on Android, depending. We're actually going to talk to you about that a little bit at some point. We actually had like 8 hours with Eric previously. Yeah, no, he's a good guy. But that was several months ago when we were just sort of in the middle of this, and he helped us a lot with figuring out. So there's a promo for hiring one of the core team members to spend some time with your team. But he helped us out a lot in figuring out exactly how we wanted to tie everything together and how to really make it into a more. We weren't doing things the Ember way. We were sort of doing things the old-fashioned way, but using Ember. And he helped us see how to better do things the way Ember would have them done. And it just works better if you're using Ember and you do it the way that Ember wants you to do it.
I have a question. So
yeah.
This is built off handlebars using Ember.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, we're running 1.7 right now. We're working on upgrading to, well, we don't know, 1.8 or 1.9 depending. But yeah.
1.8 may solve some of your performance problems.
Yeah, we're hoping
Just
so.
magically. 1.9 definitely will,
Yeah.
because it'll be both metal views and hopefully HTML bars.
We have a version that we are running with 1.8, but we have one significant problem, which is that the did insert element in the application view never fires. So
Well, we don't know if it's caused by major changes in the routing.
yeah,
So I can get did insert obviously to call somewhere else.
Yeah.
So if I move some code into like one of the sub views,
Yeah.
but if I did insert obviously it calls, but
Yeah.
for some reason the application used to call on every single page.
we can write a separate app
I see.
and it works there. It just doesn't seem to work in ours for some reason. So it's something that we've configured that causes it not to work.
I mean, it should only ever fire once.
Yeah, it
Right.
normally does.
That's what we want because that's actually
You're seeing it fire every time?
no, it never fires.
Never firing is bad. That's a bug for sure.
Yeah, because it
But you're wondering like what you've done to cause it to not.
yes, yeah, because that's where it actually. So Dan was saying all the UI elements are their own libraries that we've written. So like the page slider and the side menu and stuff.
Yeah.
That's the point at which we actually initialize all those because we know the content is on the page in order to initialize those libraries. So that's the one problem we have, or the two problems, I guess. A little bit of speed with Android and then trying to do that upgrade. But we'll figure it out. So, anybody else got questions about things? No, I'm not showing the right application here. So
So I'm a little bit confused. How would you hijack the URL so you know that it's on a mobile device that actually runs your app best?
yeah,
We have a plugin on the server that sends us the data.
right. So we actually own all the forums that we're on right now. So we just install a plugin on the forum. So the way the application works is you go to the forum website, the plugin triggers, it recognizes that you're eligible for the Topify interface. It takes you to essentially an index.html. That index.html references our JavaScript, CSS, all that stuff on our servers and sucks it in and then displays it there for you. And then there's a little bit of communication that happens between that page and our servers, but 99.9% of the communication happens between that page and the plugin that's actually installed on the forum to obtain all that content.
We basically download the Ember app into that server. Run it.
Where's my cookie?
You're saying it's a different API for the mobile?
Right. Yeah. So like all these forums run, like I'm sure you've heard of like the forum software.
This is vBulletin,
Yeah,
is what
this is
AVS runs on.
It's like printing HTML. It wasn't what a JSON API
Yeah. No. Yeah. It's old school.
Yeah, forums are very like the oldest school thing on the internet, just about.
Yeah. Like error messages come in as HTML and stuff, so we have to. So there is a plugin that we've written that's a JSON.
Yeah. That's
I
it.
wanted to show us how we launched about a week ago. So
Yeah, we're all pretty excited.
What do you guys use for like front end viewing animations and stuff? You said you guys wrote that all yourself, or are you guys using any specific libraries? Or
Yeah, we use was it animation CSS? It's like a pre-built CSS file with a bunch of decent animations in it.
like what you see right there, this is one of their animations. I think it's Pulse or something.
Yeah, so it's letting you know that you have notifications. So when you click on it, you have these notifications here.
Lack of the ability to animate element removal. You're just not animating that, or like there's no will remove in a hot second element callback can be used.
You can. I think Animate CSS has a callback, doesn't it?
Well, no, but the Ember views don't, right? Like they're immediately removed from it.
Yeah. So
to get like
yes.
if you wanted this to animate out.
Are you just like hand waves and forget about it, or
I don't know.
no, we're not really.
You don't do it anywhere.
We're not really using Ember so much for anything that's fancy in the UI. We don't really use Ember per se. So there's literally like topify.breadcrumbbar.js, topify.pageslider.js, topify.whatever sort of thing that handles all the fancy UI elements. And part of that is because we did all of that first. Like we did the UI demo last year to prove that it could be done, and then picked a platform based on, or a framework based on testing, all the usual suspects, including Ember.
One weird thing we do is if you click on the new topic, I guess this is kind of what you were saying, is that kind of animates in, and if you hit back, it kind of animates out. So what that is, that's an entire outlet on the page. So we have we have multiple outlets. We don't just use outlets. We have like the page outlet, the pop-up outlet.
Yeah, we probably have
that was
a dozen outlets.
That was kind of a decent hack, I would actually say.
This thing too.
That would be actually maybe a feature request in routing. Yeah. Is this, we actually, if you watch, we don't even use query primes or anything when this is open. It's a complete state and we actually hack the route location because you can actually hit the native back.
Yeah. You want URLs, route states basically.
Right.
We don't want the hash because if you hit back, it could actually open it again.
That means that's like the third most common request we get for things like modals.
Yeah.
You still want to use the router to control objects that have view rendering, loading states.
Yeah.
But you don't want to update the URL because it's like no one can navigate here. Don't do it.
Right.
There's a few interesting things that we did as far as I don't know if you saw what I just did. So like if I open the side menu and then I hit the back button up here, the side menu just closes. Right. So we have special code in Ember that keeps track of all the things that are going on the page, and then when you hit the back button, it's like, okay, based on whatever's happening, what should I do? And if I shouldn't do anything, then I just let it go back, because the back button does work other times, so it went back to where I was before. One interesting thing with that is when you very first come into the forum and you open this, you don't want the back button natively would actually leave the forum, because immediately it would change the URL. So we actually use Ember to insert a fake page. Every time you hit the forum, we insert a fake page that you would get back to when you hit the back button. Because you can't stop the browser from changing the URL.
A week-long hack.
That was an interesting thing to figure out.
That's hardcore.
Yeah, it's really frustrating, like the window location API in the browser. The fact that it allows you to like programmatically go backwards loading of your domain. Seems
right.
Like
and you can't change it. You can't update it. You should be able to update it.
Yes, but you can't.
You can
like,
inject, but you can't.
Yeah, but you can keep doing like window location -1, even if that takes you
past yours.
Right.
To the previous domain, which is
right.
What? It doesn't make any sense at all. Why would you do that?
Stuff like that. I guess that's it.
Yay.
Thanks.
Awesome. Anyone else have 5 or 10 minutes of a thing they'd like to show? Very well. If not, then we will do our traditional pattern of retiring down to the motel bar on the ground floor of this building, just sort of slightly outside for anyone who'd like to join us for social drinks. Totally optional. You're also welcome to go home and be with your loved ones, pets, or whoever's waiting for you. But please, if you'd like to, come get a drink. We'll probably be there for 30, 40 minutes. So thanks, everyone. Thanks for coming.